Uh, Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about what it looks like as a plugin writer. So I mentioned discovery is the key. You can do automatic discovery, so that's where we write a Hudson plugin that can actually go look for a running process, a running Java process, and look for the Hudson main class. Or you could have the user just say, no, I want the user to go ahead and tell me what URL the Hudson server is on. You can support both, makes it easy to do remote monitoring, and you have the full power of both the process scanning that's cross-platform automatically, or the the basic built-in stuff that you want to do right through Java. In this case, the Hudson plugin is built up of only 4 different components. They're fairly simple components. Again, we've got at 2 levels of the inventory, we've got the Hudson server itself, and then we've got the Hudson build projects underneath. And so we've got discovery components that find each of those, and we've got the runtime components that actually do the monitoring and management. And you write these components, you write against our interfaces, and it'll go out and execute the discoveries on timed jobs. It gives you all this infrastructure around running those reports and bringing them back to the server. And then it'll maintain and manage executing the plugin in that container environment. So it's real easy to write a simple plugin that just says, okay, you tell me what metrics you want. All right, I can return 10 metrics about a project, and so that project component is very simple. It just has a method to get values with the project component, and then our infrastructure will actually give the user the full capability to say, I want to create system-wide templates of how often certain metrics get collected. Or I want to say for this group of resources, I want to change it, and I want to collect these other metrics. Or I want to change it because I'm having a specific problem on this server. And all of that, that management of running the schedules down to the server, collecting the information, returning it back, that's all built into this infrastructure. Things like, hey, the agent can't talk to the server, it's still going to collect that information, locally spool it, and reliably deliver it back to the server. You get access to all that infrastructure through a simple plugin. So in this case, I mentioned that the JSON example, this is just how Hudson goes ahead and looks for those projects. You can see a little bit of code here. We've got, in this case, a defined and configured Hudson server, and we're going to go ahead and say, I can detect it on this URL. I've got a pretty simple system. I'm looking for, I've got a configured URL at this point. I'm going to go look for the projects, and we can see, I wrote a simple JSON utility that went out and made a JSON call and collected the list of all the projects, parse it out, and basically create a project item for each of those inventoried systems, and immediately that's going to show up as a set of services right underneath that Hudson server. Mention the monitoring. Again, this is a real simple interface. These are the metrics that you're requesting, that are being requested by the user according to schedules, or maybe they're doing real-time collection. They want the specific values right now. And all you do is you implement one simple interface. What metrics do you want? And you add them to a report, and the entire system behind that is going to be managed for you. Again, configuration, it's the same sort of stuff. You basically say, I know how to take a configuration for any given item and transform it into the abstract model, or to take the abstract model and transform it back into the store system. So for example, with doing Samba configurations, we go out, use a couple tool sets to go and collect that information, transform it into a structured format that's the base of our configuration system. It'll show up as an easy-to-edit set of configuration elements right within Jopper. You can do cluster-oriented configuration management of that over multiple boxes. It's saved. It'll push those changes out to all those boxes. And then your plugin, again, takes that structure and writes it back into the native system for what you're managing. So with things like data sources, we might be doing XML format changes. With EAP5 and JBoss AS5.1, we're actually going to be using the profile service, which is a new infrastructure of the microcontainer that allows us to get direct API access to configuration changes. So whatever it is, whether you're configuring a database, you can actually go in and make DDL changes as part of a configuration change. So that's something we can offer actually through the Postgres plugin, is treating the configuration of tables as if they are just normal configuration elements. We can detect changes, audit the history of that, and get all that information back into one correlated event system. And so this is just an example of the metadata behind configuration. So we have some simple properties. And so if I want to define 2 simple properties, in this case, it's actually for the JVM monitoring component, it'll show up as right in my UI as new items that I can configure. We have rich support for types. If you have enumerated values that, here are the allowed values for a particular resource, they'll show up as a drop-down. So you get a lot of power in the UI as well, just by defining some simple metadata. You can provide descriptions, etc. And then you can also do validation right within your plugin. And when you throw an error on a specific property, that'll show up in the UI. So again, easy system to write, but rich interface for the user, rich control. This is an example of running a plugin that does operational control. It's a simple interface again. What operation you'll want to run. Here's the structured set of configuration parameters. And then we go and execute that request. In this case, we're actually getting information about threading. We can actually do like a thread dump, basically. Take that from the JVM platform MDean, transform it into a structured result, send that back, and then you can see all the threads that are running in a JVM right within our interface. Again, you can schedule it as a report, so it runs every so often. You get a lot of power out of that. And in this case, actually, it's another example of the Hibernate request where we went out and collected information about the queries and returned that information. So again, with events, right? These are things like log messages. They can be any event that you could listen for, or it could be an event that you poll for. So we have some infrastructure around how to poll or how to listen. But if you've got, if you want to say start up an SNMP trap listener, you can do that and listen for traps. If you want to use our log polling information, we have structure information around and utilities how to actually poll for log4j messages. So we'll tail the file, and as new events come in, we'll transform them, bring them back into the system. But we also have an example for where we listen for syslog. So we actually create an rsyslog listener, and you can redirect. You can actually configure your rsyslog to send all the events also to that listener and feed those back into the system. And again, once you've done that, it's going to abstract, correlate everything, so you can see those events in the timeline right next to your log4j messages, right next to your configuration changes, etc. With content, so this is our subsystem for how we do deployments. And so we can do things like detecting what packages are installed on an operating system. With Windows, we detect installed apps. With Linux, we can detect installed RPMs, detect what versions they're running, etc. And the content system is a two-way system. It actually gives you the ability to push out new content. So if I've got a custom ear file, I can push that out. If I want to update it, I can do that, get it deployed out. But with the plugin system, I can actually use it to do pretty much anything.